whether you're installing new servers on-prem or installing them in Azure or doing Office 365 related projects. What I do is help the sales team design and spec out the hardware, software, services, and licensing that's required for those projects, and then help write the proposals to give to our clients and prospects. Today, what we're doing is I was asked a while back to do a webinar on Microsoft Teams, and over the last couple of years, we've done several of them and a lot of PowerPoint presentations and talked about what you could do with Teams. So I told our marketing manager that this time I'd like to just do a demo and show everybody really how we use it internally at Sikich. I work remote 100% of the time. I'm located in Northeast Georgia, if you hadn't figured out by the accent already. And so I've been working remote for years, even before COVID hit. But it's really, Microsoft Teams is one of those tool sets that makes it really easy to work remote. And it's a really good tool to use on premise as well. So I just wanted to go through today, talk about the different areas of Microsoft Teams and how we use them, do some demos. I have very few PowerPoint slides to show you, so hopefully it'll keep you engaged. If you have any questions during the session, just use the chat in the Teams client and leave me any questions you want. This isn't going to take the whole hour. It probably is going to take about 35, 40 minutes, and then we'll leave a lot of time for questions at the end. And if there's some I just don't have time to get to, or if I don't know the answer, I promise I won't give you an answer. If I don't know the correct answer, I will look it up and get back with you. That's one of those pet peeves of mine. It drives me crazy when people always give you an answer and sometimes it's the wrong one. So I purposely won't do that. So let's go ahead and get started. The agenda for today, get my slides going here. We're going to break it up in 5 different sections. I'm going to go over audio conferencing, file storage and collaboration, internal communication, Teams phone, and talk a little bit about Teams rooms. Really can't do a demo on the Teams room, but I just want to talk about it a little bit, let you guys know what the components are to use Teams rooms. So let's see. Talk about the first section, which is audio conferencing. And then in each of these sections, I'm going to talk about the licensing required to use those areas. I know Microsoft licensing is one of those things that everybody just loves talking about and just loves working with. So hopefully at the end of the day today, or at the end of this session, you'll have a better idea of what's required for each area, because each area does have its unique licensing requirements, and some are included with licensing that you already have today. And that's what I want to point out as well. So everybody's probably heard about the changes by now that Microsoft made at the first of the year, releasing what they call NCE licensing platform or program, and it stands for New Commerce Experience. So they've always had a monthly and an annual licensing program in Office 365. But now they're really enforcing the annual. It was in the past where you could sign up for an annual license, but you could change those quantities on the fly anytime you wanted to and get prorated licensing. So now they're going to set that. So you're going to buy those licenses for a year. You're going to pay for them up front, and you can't adjust the licenses down during that time period. So all the licensing, the cost I have today are showing you what those annual costs are. So starting out with audio conferencing, it's $48 per user per year. But the good news is starting this year, Microsoft has rolled that license into a lot of the most common license programs that we see our clients using today. And those include things like Microsoft 365, Business Basic, Standard, Premium, and then all the E3. And then on the Office 365 side, that's the real confusing part of licensing too, is they have Microsoft 365 licenses and Office 365 licenses. So you'll want to make sure that you're looking at the right licenses under all these programs. So under Office 365, you have all the E versions as well and F3. And so if you have any of those licenses today, then you'll have access to audio conferencing. Now the gotcha is Microsoft doesn't have the technical features worked out on the portal as far as being able to give you access to audio conferencing with those licenses. So what you have to do, the first thing you have to do is convert your licenses under the new NCE platform. And then you can add in free promo licenses for audio conference. So that's what, if you haven't already talked to somebody at Sikich about your licensing and getting them converted, you probably want to reach out to your sales rep or your CSR and ask them about it. If you're not currently a client with Sikich, we'd be glad to still help you and answer any questions you have on it. But whoever you bought your licenses from originally, you're going to want to get them to convert you guys over probably as soon as you can. Let's see what else under. So the audio conferencing, there is a free version out there, but if you want the ability to assign a dial-in number for an audio conference for people to, if they don't want to use the client app for some reason, they want to be able to dial in. Let's say they're on the road or just don't have access to a computer and you want to leave a dial-in number, that's what requires that license. Otherwise, you can use the free licenses if you want. And with the license, you get 60 minutes of dial-out minutes. And a lot of people get confused on this because anything dialing in is free and doesn't go against any count of total minutes that you have. But if you, for whatever reason, if you want to start a meeting and then dial out to somebody to join them into the meeting, you get 60 minutes per license that goes into a pool. So if you had 10 users with that license, you could get 600 minutes per month to use for dial out. It's rare that people use that, but we have had a few clients that all of a sudden started getting messages that their pool of minutes had expired and they needed to buy communication credits so they could get billed for the additional time, and they didn't understand why. So that's why it's always tied to dialing out. It has nothing to do with people dialing in or clicking the link to join a meeting. So let me jump in and show you just a quick demo on how to use the audio conferencing. I've got multiple screens up, so I've got to keep moving things around here. So what we do is if you go into your Outlook calendar, and everything I'm showing you today is just live on my systems. This is how I use it every day. So you can go into your calendar, just click a date and time that you want to start a meeting. When you have Teams client installed, you're going to have this Teams meeting button up here. So you can just click on that. And since I have a Teams audio conference license assigned to me, I have a dial-in number that's assigned to every meeting that I create. So people can dial into this number if they want to. Most of the time, people just click a link to join the meeting, probably like what you did today, and can get in that way. Another way you can do it is if you already have an email that somebody sent you. Let's take this email from Mike today. And I want to just create a meeting. There's a button up here that says reply with meeting. If I click on that, then it's going to give me the option. It's going to give me that Teams meeting button again, but it's going to add it down here. The nice thing about this is then all the messages that we had going back and forth, basically meeting notes in the meeting that we've set up, which is handy. So that's another way you can do it. Within Microsoft Teams, bring up the Teams screen, you have a calendar button on the left column over here, and it reads in your Outlook calendar. So everything that's on my Outlook calendar is here. And you'll notice that when a time is active where you have a meeting, it has a join button where you can just click join and join the meeting right away. Otherwise, you can always double click into a meeting and there'll be a join button up here in the top right corner. And so let's take a look at, I guess I'll go ahead and go into this one. Sorry about that. Let me jump back over here. So if I bring in the meeting that we have going on right now, you'll see different things across the top: chat, my favorite thing, reactions. I think that's annoying most of the time. Polls, and then there's other options under the ellipsis buttons that you can do. You can record meetings. We're recording this one today. You'll see the message up here. It shows that we're recording, and it'll be available for you guys later if you want to pass it on to somebody else. You've got camera, microphone, share, where you can share different screens, or you can share applications that you have running. Right now I'm sharing just a screen, one of my screens, so I can move windows around and show you guys. So it's pretty easy to use. It doesn't take a lot of training for your end users to be able to start using Teams conferencing. And really, since Microsoft changed it so it's built into a lot of your Office 365 licenses today, if you're using other products, you can save a lot of money just by switching over and using the audio conferencing, since you don't have to buy other licenses for other programs that you might be using out there. So let's jump in and talk about storage a little bit. That's probably the one area that a lot of people don't understand that you can use with Microsoft Teams. And again, to use it for file storage and collaboration, basically it's included in the same licenses we talked about before. Any license that has access to Teams itself. You can use it for file storage and collaboration. Once again, no additional licenses required. You don't have to go out and start buying add-on licenses for it. But just to give you an idea of how we use it here at Sikich and how I use it, I'm in it all day long. I'm either in Teams, Outlook, or SharePoint are basically my three big applications that I use. What we did at Sikich is in this left column, you can see different teams that we have configured. And I would guess we probably have dozens and dozens of teams, but these are the only ones that I have been given membership to. So these are the only ones that I'm going to see. And really the only one I work in is the IT solutions, security and cybersecurity, or solutions and cybersecurity team site. And underneath it, we created a channel called, the team is actually called ZTech Sellers. The channel is called IT Solutions and Cybersecurity. And then under there, we have files set up, just a file structure, just like what you would see if you had a map drive, to a server somewhere. And we have one called SA, which is Solution Architects. So there's just two of us that work in this folder structure and file structure all day long. But we've given access to other people, so some of our sales reps can go in here and see some of the documentations that we've been working on. But we do things like we have all of our quoting templates in here. So we create documents, we name them template, and then we have different ones that we use for different technologies that we quote out. And we have these set, so once we start working on one for a client, we'll rename it, put the client name in there, and then we'll put it over in SharePoint. And I'll show you how we use SharePoint in a few minutes and why we use SharePoint the way we do. And it's important to remember too that Teams is built on top of SharePoint. So even if you didn't do anything in SharePoint at all, as soon as you create your first team, it's creating a SharePoint team site, if you will, underneath the covers. And then as you create and store files under the file folder up here, it's actually creating a document library within that team or that SharePoint team site. So a lot of complaints in the past were with people, they didn't want to have to maintain SharePoint. They didn't want to have to learn how to, or hire somebody to maintain it for them. Teams gives you not only that clean, easy user interface to work with, but it takes away all that management. So you don't have to worry about trying to figure out how to create websites and make them look nice and pretty, because Teams gives you that built-in end user interface that it's just so simple to use for everybody, because it's just basically a folder structure for storing files, just like if they had a map drive, on their workstation. So it's real easy to get files in here. There's multiple ways. You can go under New and pick which application you want to open up and start working in a file. Just give it a name, and it's going to create it in the folder structure where you created it. When you open it that way, it's going to open in what's called the web app versions of the Office applications. And you'll notice this opened in a browser, but it looks a lot like Word. It's got a lot of the same features and functionality, probably 90-95% of what everybody uses day in and day out. And you'll notice as you start typing, up at the top it says saved. So it's actually saving the document as you're working on it, so you don't have to worry about saving it. Once you give it that name, it's going to have that name. So if I go out here and close it now and go back into my folder, there's the document down here at the bottom. Other ways you can get documents in here, you can do an upload. So you can upload files or folders. So you can just browse out and pick something you want to upload. I'll just pick that document. And you'll notice up here in the top right corner, it said uploading. It goes pretty quick. It doesn't take very long to do it. The other thing you can do is you can just drag and drop files. So if you had files on your desktop or sitting in a folder structure somewhere, you can just drag and drop them here. Again, it'll upload them, keeps the names the same. Real easy to get documentation in here. If you do have a lot of documentation you want to migrate into Teams, we recommend using a tool that can do the migration for you. And there's several tools out there that we use at Sikich to help our clients either migrate files out of other solutions like SharePoint on-prem, or just file structure that are sitting out on a server somewhere. Let's see. So some of the options you can do in these documents. So if I click this ellipsis button next to the document I have, and I go under Open, I have options where I can edit it in Teams, where it's just going to open it up in this window, the Teams window, and let me edit that document directly if I want. Other things that it can do is open it up in the Office web apps that I showed you just a minute ago. So it's going to open, you can open it in the browser, and then you can set your default mode of how you want it to open. So I have my default to always use the full Office application. So if I just click on the document, since it's an Excel document, it's just going to open up the full Excel application and let me edit it. And one of the probably most useful tools that they came out with in Office, and it rolls over to no matter where you have the file stored, if they're in Teams or SharePoint, is the collaboration pieces of it. So if I go back, and I think I asked Mike to jump in this document earlier this morning. So if I go in here, I'll have to drag it over from another screen. It shows that Mike's in the document too, and he's actually live editing the document. And when I mouse over, I can see who's actually in there and doing this work. So I could be down here typing something at the same time, and while he's there. So it's true collaboration where we can both be in a document at the same time. And notice again, it's set to autosave. So as we're both sitting here working on this document, it's saving the document in the background. Now you can turn that autosave off, and we do that a lot with our templates. So we create a template, we store it in Teams, we turn off autosave, and then we save it again. And that keeps it from doing autosave, because when we open our templates, we don't want to actually overwrite that template. We just want to, save it as a different file name and then start working on it. Once you're done with the document, I can close out of it while Mike is still in there actively working on it, and it doesn't matter at all. It's not going to interfere with what he's doing. And then, as I was saying earlier, how Teams is built on top of SharePoint, you'll notice up here at the top, there's an Open in SharePoint option. So if I click that, it's going to open a browser up, and you'll notice it's got this exact same folder structure. So it's just right in the SharePoint site. Like I was telling you, all the files are here. If you go and hit the ellipsis buttons here, you will notice it has a few more options. And that's what's nice about these cloud solutions is when Microsoft came out with Teams, originally it had very few options underneath each of the files that you could actually perform on them. And as they keep adding more and more features, they just start showing up. You don't have to do anything to upgrade. They're just there. So it's catching up. SharePoint's been around for years and years, so it has a lot of powerful features built into it. And some just aren't in Teams yet. They'll probably get there at some point. One of the ones that's not there yet is the version history. This is one I really like because it shows you all of the different versions of a document, who modified them, and the date and time that they did. So if I want to go back and do a restore of a document, all I have to do is I can view it first if I want to, or just hit restore, and it's going to restore that version on top of the one that's out there. I personally use that all the time because I'll be in my templates and I'll forget to save them as a different name, and I'll hit save, and I just, real easy to jump in SharePoint, go to version history and restore it. Only takes a few seconds. It's real easy to get to. The other thing you can do is a feature that's in SharePoint, and it's actually been added to Teams now, is the checkout, where if you had a document you wanted to lock to keep somebody from editing it because maybe you're working on it and you don't want somebody else messing with it, you can check it out and that'll lock it for editing, and nobody else can get into it and make any changes until you check it back in. That's one of the features that wasn't there, I don't know, maybe a year ago, and then it's been added to the Teams part of it. And then in SharePoint, you can also some automation. So you can do workflows where if you had a document that you wanted to, once you finished with it, you wanted to move it on to somebody else to perform some type of automation, you can do that in SharePoint. The one thing that we use SharePoint for, I was telling you earlier, I use SharePoint quite a bit, is a couple years ago, it was before COVID, we at Sikich had a file share on a server that I would have to VPN into to the office and get to that file share. And it had a folder structure that had a folder for every prospect or client that we ever had done work for. And as you can imagine, there were tens of thousands of folders in there. That doesn't work well in a Teams environment because it's too much scrolling and it would take forever to scroll through. So one thing that SharePoint has is this search feature up top. Typing in the name of a client, it's going to come up with every client folder or any document or anything that has that word in it. And then I can just jump in there, click on it, and then immediately go into the folder structure and start looking for the document that I want to get to. So you don't have to have all your documentation in one or the other technologies. You can use both SharePoint and Teams together, and we do that quite a bit here at Sikich. Check my list real quick, make sure I showed you everything there. And the other thing I want to talk about a little bit is once you start storing documents in Teams or SharePoint or both, it's a good idea to have some type of backup solution. A lot of people ask, well, why do you have to do that? They're in the cloud. They're redundant, they're replicated, they're pretty safe, but they're not safe from people. So you could have somebody accidentally delete some documents. You could have somebody maliciously delete documents. And if somebody deletes something and you don't recognize that it's missing right away, after a certain amount of time, it's going to be gone forever. Because when you delete a document in Teams and SharePoint, it goes into a recycle bin. And then after a certain number of days, you can set the time on it. It goes from that recycle bin into an admin recycle bin. And then after another, it's either 30 or 90 days, I can't remember now, it empties that admin recycle bin and then it's gone for good. And there's no way even Microsoft can't recover it. So it's always a good idea to have a third-party backup solution. We use a product from a company called Sikich. It's their cloud backup solution. And it has several different licenses that you can buy. You can buy an email only license, so it only backs up email and Office 365, or you can buy a Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive for business only license, so it only backs up data in those technologies, or you can buy a combined license that backs up everything: email, SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive. And depending on your user set, you might want to mix and match those licenses. So if you had users that only used email on Office 365, you can buy just the email only license. And those are $3 per user per month. It's unlimited amount of storage, and it's also indefinite storage. So it keeps it forever unless you set your own retention policy, which you can do, and which you may have a reason to do that. A lot of clients have to delete data after a certain amount of time. And then the combined license is $5 per user per month for everything. So we would highly recommend using some type of, there's quite a few third-party solutions out there that can do backup of the data in Office 365. All right, let's go back to our slides. And the next area I want to talk about is just internal communication. So that would be just the instant messaging or chat features and the PC calling. Once again, same licensing. Anything that has, or any user that has these licenses, have access to Teams, and you'll have access to do, anything with the chat and the PC to PC calling. Here, let me show you what that looks like. So on the left column over here, you'll have a chat section. I started a chat with Mike earlier today. And actually, this top one's a good point, something good to point out. When you have a meeting set up in Teams, and it's going to show you that meeting over here, and it keeps track of the chat session in the meeting. So after the meeting's over, you have a history of the chats that went on within that meeting. And I can go down through my list here on the left side at any meeting I've been in. And because a lot of times people, cut and paste URL links or important information in there, and it's nice to go back to those and see what that information is after the fact. But chat is nothing fancy. You can just go in and type in. You can reading the users out of Active Directory. So if I type in somebody's first name, it's going to bring up everybody that we have in our Active Directory, and I can just pick their name to start a chat session with them. Or I can talk, and I can do things like turn on the camera. I can call them. If somebody has multiple phone numbers in Active Directory, like Mike only has his direct office number in here, but if he had a cell number, it would list it as well. So I could click on it and just make a phone call directly to him through this session. Some of the other features, I can do a screen share through the chat session as well, and I can add additional people. So if I got a session going with Mike and I decide I need to add Jeff in here, I can just click this button, look up Jeff's name, and add him into our session too. And another feature that's cool is this pop-out chat. I work in Teams so much that a lot of times I'm working on documentation that's over here, But if I'm using my screen for the chat session, it's hard to go back and forth. So using that pop out button, now I can use this and I can move that over to one of my other screens and keep a chat session going while I went over here and got back into my documentation. So if I was needed to refer back to it for some reason, I could do that during a chat session, which is really nice. And then once you close that pop out, everything's still tracked in the main screen. The other thing you'll notice is it shows the free busy data of everybody. Red button shows you that they're busy or in a meeting. Green means they're available. Gold means they've been away from their desk for a certain amount of time that they have their timeout set to. So it's a nice way to be able to see if somebody's busy. And that's the other nice thing about chat too, is if they are busy, you can still send them a message and let them reply back whenever they're freed up. And you don't have to go to the time to shoot them an email or type up a long message. So that one's pretty simple. Not a lot of fancy stuff to do with chat, but it's a very useful tool. And again, it's one of those that's free as long as you have one of those licenses already. All right. So the next one is Teams Phone. So Microsoft has been dealing with phone systems for, I don't know what year they first came out, but it's been renamed over the years. It was Link, then they bought Skype, and then before that was Office Communication Systems, and it's had several other names throughout the years. And several of us at Sikich have been working with them way back when they first came out. But when they came out with Teams and they integrated the phone solution into Teams, it really took off. And especially when COVID hit, we had clients that were in a world of hurt because they had the old school PBX systems on-prem and they sent everybody home, and it was just a nightmare trying to get people were having to use their personal cell phones for business, which a lot of them didn't like. So we had a lot of projects right away where we were helping people implement the Microsoft Teams phone system. But the licensing for it's a little bit more complicated. So now we start getting into additional licenses that are required. So to start off with, you have to have an Office or Microsoft 365 license that includes access to Teams. So all those licenses I've been showing you this morning, you have to have one of those already. And then you can add on a Teams phone license on top of that. And they have a combo license. The Teams phone solution is really two licenses that are required. There's a Teams phone license and you need some type of calling plan. So they have this combo license now, which they dropped the price on this year. So it's $180 per year. That gives you the phone and the domestic calling plan. The domestic calling plan comes with 3,000 minutes for US and Canada if you're located in a US based tenant. If you're in a different country, if you have a tenant in a different country, then you're going to get minutes that are based in that, whatever your home country is. But you're going to get 3,000 minutes. They go into a pool. So to this date, I still don't think we've had anybody that ever outused their minutes. That's a lot of minutes when you start thinking about the business, how many business days are in a month and how many hours are in a business day. So I don't think we've had anybody go over that pool yet. But another way to do it is you can get just the Teams phone license by it. And you'll notice it's more expensive if you buy the two licenses independently. But you might want to do that because there's other options out there where you can do things like direct routing and operator connect, which are both ways to use a third party to provide your dial tone and your calling plan. So if you had somebody already today that had a SIP trunk that was providing your phone system solution with, and you just wanted to stick with it, you could just buy the Teams phone license by itself, and then you would need a piece of hardware called an SBC or session border controller that would connect you up to their SIP trunk. And there's lots of providers out there today that are doing that solution, and a lot of them have a cloud-based SBC, so you don't have to have that piece of hardware on-prem. And then one of the other more common licenses is this common area phone. And think of that as a phone that's really not assigned to a user. That's maybe sitting out in a kitchen or a lobby or a break room or some area where there's not somebody that's going to be logging in as themselves to that phone or that solution. And then if you want to use that phone for calling inbound and outbound off the phone solution, then you'll need a calling plan on that as well. So Sikich moved over to the Teams phone. I think it was several months before, probably 6 months before COVID hit. So we've got everybody, we've got about 1,200 employees throughout the whole corporation that are some remote. I think we have about a dozen physical offices, but we have a lot of remote users like myself that are scattered all over the country. And all of us are connected using Teams phone. Let me bring up and show you what that looks like. So once you add the Teams phone license, you get a new button over on the left side over here called Calls. And the solution fully integrates into the Teams client, which is nice because now you're not using a separate application for it. So to call somebody, you just punch in their number, hit call, nice and simple. You can use a lot of people just use their microphone and speakers that's built into their laptop, but we recommend using a certified Teams device. And the reason you want to do that is so you're using a device that's going to be supported through Microsoft. So if you're having issues with phone quality, voice quality, or whatever, if you call support, one of the first things they're going to ask is if you're using a certified device. The other thing they're going to ask is if you're running voice over wireless, which I do at home. I'm usually the only one on the wireless during the day here anyway, so it's not an issue. But if you were at a business office and had dozens of people trying to run voice over wireless, that may be an issue if you didn't have a real good corporate level wireless implementation. So some of the things you'll see here, voicemail up here, I left one for myself this morning. It shows you in text what the person said in your voicemail. Over here on the right, you can actually just hit the call button and call them back. Again, you have more options under the ellipsis buttons. And then down here at the bottom right corner, you can actually play the message back. And one of my favorite features is the speed playback, because if you get somebody that's long-winded or maybe they have a southern drawl and they talk slow, you can speed them up. And you'll also notice that when the voicemail comes into Teams, it's actually in your inbox as well. So I can open up an inbox. Again, I have the ability just to play it right from here. It has the transcription already. It does a fairly good job of doing the transcription. Just depends on how clearly the person talks. Sometimes they're pretty funny of how bad they are when they come across, depending on the person that's leaving the message. But anyway, you'll see different areas here. You have all your history of inbound, outbound calls. It's one of the features on the bottom left corner down here is you'll notice it says forward to Eric Wilkins. So if I go in here and look under more settings, I actually have my Teams phone number. When it rings, it also rings my cell phone, which is really nice because if I'm sitting here at my desk and I want to get up, let's say I'll just go eat lunch or step outside for a minute, I grab my cell phone and take it with me. So if somebody calls my office number, I can answer it on my cell phone and not miss a call. The other thing you can do is just forward it. So it forwards all your calls. We have had clients that didn't use any Teams certified devices because they were going to use their cell phones. They were going to forward everything to their cell phones. So that's another way to do this where you don't have to spend a lot of money on devices. And it's also important to remember that this is new technology. And one thing that I was watching a Microsoft webinar a couple months ago, and something they pointed out was to try not to let our clients design this solution based on a 40-year-old PBX phone system that they have. You want to implement these solutions the way they were designed to be used. And this was really designed to be a mobile solution. So you have things like today I'm speaking to you, I don't know if this cord's long enough where you can see it, just on a speaker puck. It's a Jabra, very inexpensive speaker puck, sits on my desk, has a couple buttons on it where you can hang up a call, change the volume, mute your call, whatever. And then other options are things like I also have a headset. So if it gets noisy around here, I can throw a headset on and block out that background noise. And they do make certified desktop phones, just like the old school phones. Some have touch screens on them now, but we try to really steer our clients to using the mobile devices because that's how the solution was built. That's how it works the best. And that's how you're going to get the most utilization out of it. It's really nice to be able to pack up your laptop, throw a headset in a bag, go to a client site, go wherever. I've had my internet go down before where it's going to be an extended period of time, and I go to the local library, take my headset with me, and just make all the calls I want to do right there. So it comes in very handy to use it for the way it was intended to be used. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to show you here. I think that covers most of the stuff on the phone side. One thing it doesn't have built into it is faxing capability. And it's funny, on that same webinar I watched with Microsoft, somebody asked the question if they were ever going to add faxing into it. And the guy said, let me explain this very clearly. No, never. He goes, faxing needs to go away. He says, it started off with carrier pigeons and sending messages via carrier pigeons. That technology went away. Then it went to telegraphs. That technology went away. He says, and it came out with faxing. That technology needs to go away. So don't look for Microsoft to integrate faxing into the solution. If you need faxing, which a lot of people still do, we do have ways around it. Our first option is go to some cloud solution. eFax is what we recommend. But if you still have to have that physical fax machine, there's a way we can use a third party to get us integration into using the old POTS line with a physical fax machine and do faxing that way. And Microsoft is adding new features to this solution all the time. There's some I know that are on the drawing board. I've got a link at the end of this slideshow that shows you a link where you can go and actually see what people have requested, and then it lets you vote on them. And the more votes they get, the higher up the ladder it goes to Microsoft for them to implement those features and solutions into Microsoft Teams. So it's something that's fun to watch and see new solutions coming out. I did see recently where a lot of people are asking to have an email button over here on the left side, so they don't have to drop into Outlook all the time. They can just click a button over here. From what I understand, that's on the roadmap, but I can't promise you anything, but at least there's a lot of people wanting that feature. So there's all the time, there's new stuff coming out, and you typically don't hear about it. You'll just be in Teams one day and you'll say, oh, wait, here's a new feature. What does this do? And then you can take it from there. So the last thing I want to talk about was Teams Rooms. And what that is, a complete audio video solution that you can use with Teams and audio conferencing. And the licensing required for that is there's a combo license called Teams Room Standard. The only thing it doesn't have in it is the calling plan, but it does have the Microsoft Teams license, phone system license, audio conferencing. It has Intune as well, so you can manage the equipment that you use for the Teams Room. And it has the Azure AD Premium P1 plan license in it. So with this one, you would just add the domestic calling plan and you'd be all set to go. There's two main vendors that we recommend with the Teams Room. One is Logitech and the other one is Poly, which used to be Polycom. And actually I don't know if they're going to change their name again. I heard they just got acquired by Hewlett Packard. So probably going to be a lot of changes coming down the pipe for them. But both these companies have new solutions out within the last several months that they have a single audio video bar that you would mount either above or below a TV screen or a monitor in a conference room. And within that bar is a camera, multiple microphones, and multiple speakers. And each of those solutions also have a touchpad that sits on the conference room table. And what you would do is you set up an actual account in Office 365 to use for that room, what you did with Exchange with resource groups a long time ago. And you would invite that room to a meeting. So when the meeting starts, you go into the room on that touchscreen display, it already has the meeting sitting there waiting on you. All you have to do is hit one button, it joins the meeting, it turns on the audio, the video, and you're ready to go. Just very simple to use. Those new audio video bars are incredibly good at the microphone pickup, and they've got units that can pick up 15, 20 feet away without having to have additional microphones on the tables. But that is an option where you can add extended microphones on the tables if you need to. And then the cameras autofocus on the person that's speaking at the time. They can do, I think that's called audio fencing, where if there was noise, if somebody's talking in the room and there's noise around them or outside the room, the microphones can, focus in on the person that's talking and block out the background noise. And really powerful pieces of equipment, and they're really not that expensive for a very small room. For just a couple people, they start at about $1,500 for the equipment, and going up to what they consider a large room, which is about up to 15 people, goes up to about 7,500. And that's not counting the TV screen. So you would use whatever TV screens you want to use. And then once you get up to where you're using, I don't know, 20, 25, maybe more people, or a very large room or an auditorium, that's really when you want to hire a professional AV company to come in, because they can design that room out with multiple screens. They'll have the mics that drop down from the ceiling and strategically locate them across the room so they pick up everybody. But for most of our clients, typical conference rooms, you can get by with these Teams room solutions, and they work out really. So the last thing I want to talk about is, and I'll show you here's that slide I had that has the Teams feedback features on it. Pretty neat website to look for. And I also gave you the link to download the Teams desktop app and the mobile app, which I failed to mention. There is a Teams mobile app, so you can put that on your phone. And if you need to join a meeting, you can join an audio conference or whatever directly from your cell phone. So if you're on the road traveling, it comes in very handy. So the last thing I want to talk about is something we do at Sikich that makes it a quick, easy way to get into some of these technologies. Is we have pilot programs for things like the audio conferencing, collaboration, and the phone system. So each of those is really not a lot of time involved, especially with the phone system and audio conferencing. It's just a matter of buying a couple licenses for a group of pilot people that you want to do some testing with. We'll do the initial configuration. We'll assign some phone numbers to the people to use, which will not interfere with the phone system they have today, because we're not going to port any numbers over to start with. We're just going to give you an additional number to use, so you can try out the Teams phone solution. And then we'll do end user training for anybody that's part of that pilot program. And then also some admin training. So we'll take you into the Teams admin portal and show you all the different ways to configure things like call routing and call queues and auto attendance and all the powerful things on the back end that you need to use to set up a phone system for. And probably the longest one of those, the audio conferencing on the Teams phone, we can do within a day. Usually they're like 4 to 6 hours worth of time. And then the one we do for the Teams for collaboration and document management takes a little bit longer amount of time, but that's usually somewhere between 2 and 3 days. And we'll set up a couple different teams for you, show you how to upload some documentation to it, do some end user training. It also includes time for discussion about how the structure would fit into your organization. So if you want to do it by departments, if you want to do it by projects, however you want your team to be laid out. And then we'll also look at the data that you have that you may need help migrating in. And we'll come up with a budget number for you guys to help migrate that data into Teams or SharePoint or wherever you want to put it. And to talk about how we use OneDrive for Business, because I didn't mention that at the beginning either, but we use OneDrive for Business, what people use for their H drive or their home drive for years and years on servers. So it's that personal data that's not really shared with anybody in the corporation, but it's data that users are concerned about. They really want to have a backup of it. And that's the kind of data that's good to put in OneDrive for Business, because it gets it off your workstations. And it also makes deploying new workstations a lot easier and faster, because now you don't have to copy all that data back over that people may have had stored locally. It's just set up in OneDrive, and you can do the sync and keep it local if you want to. So actually went a little bit longer than I thought. Let me look and see if there's any questions so far.
Yes, we do have some questions in there, Eric.
Okay.
While you're looking at the questions and answer that, I'll pull up a quick one question poll as well.
Okay. Let me bring this over to my other screen here. Yeah, one thing there's a lot of questions in here. Probably what I'll end up having to do, since I actually went a little bit longer than I thought I would, I'll go through these questions after the fact. And I don't know if there's a way we post the questions and answers somewhere, or if we just need to reply back to whoever answered them. It'd be kind of nice.
We'll have to follow up with them after the webinar.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll be sending out a copy of the recording. Yeah, somebody asked about long file names, and that's a great question, because SharePoint used to have that limit, just like your on-premise file structure was, and it was like 256 characters. Now that has been expanded. I looked just last week, and I can't remember what it was, but it was some astronomically long, like 700 or 800 characters now it supports. I used to run into the issue all the time when I was saving documents that I would hit that limit, and I haven't run into that in the last year probably. So yeah, it's a lot longer than the 256 file limit you get with Windows. Yeah, and somebody asked about Microsoft 365 E5 includes the Teams phone license. So that's a good point. Both the Office and the Microsoft E5 licenses include the phone license themselves. The only thing you'd have to add is the calling plan on top of that. Yeah, a couple people looks like asked that one. Yeah, somebody says they're in the process of rolling it out with direct routing. We didn't get into that too much today, but that's definitely another possibility to use. A lot of times you'll want to do that if you have analog devices that you need to tie into your phone system to paging systems or door entry systems, or you might have elevators that have phones in them and that type of thing. And I didn't mention it, there's another third-party solution that we use called Attendant Console. It's made by a company called Landis Technologies. So for a receptionist, it runs right in the Teams client. It looks like it's just part of it built into it, but it gives them a nice interface to be able to answer and transfer calls. So typically with this solution, a receptionist would be wearing a headset. They would just use the Teams client on their desktop and then have that attendant console built into it, which it'll have a screen that's split in different sections, and it shows either people or groups of people where they can transfer calls to and see who's busy and who's not. So that's something we recommend quite often. Yep, somebody mentioned thank you, Michael, for mentioning the Teams app on the smartphone. So I did forget to mention that at the beginning. And somebody's asking about call queues and hunt groups. And like I said, it does have all those features, the auto attendance, and you can record your own messages, or you can use computer generated messages, or to be able to on the auto attendance or even on the call queues as well. And somebody asked about backing up Teams, and I brought that up with Sikich Cloud Backup. If you need more information on that, feel free to reach out to us at Sikich and we can help you with that. All right, I think we're about at the end. I'll go through some of these other questions, see if I missed any. If there's any I missed, I'll follow up with you after the session. I appreciate everybody's time today. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to anybody at Sikich, and we'll be glad to help you out, answer any questions you have.